Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So today's topic might be a bit controversial, both to my preferred target audience and to the people who somehow end up on my videos and don't like who I am because of my username. So I've just finished doing research for my BA thesis about stereotypes regarding the identity of the Viking. And when in the 21st century we think about the stereotypical Viking, you probably think of the masculine warrior ideal that has been constructed through 19th century political movements. But there is another side of this story, which is the idea that Viking Age society was somehow the precursor of contemporary society in regards to gender equality and women's rights and things like that. And while it might seem weird, I today actually want to problematize this view of the Viking Age and talk about why it is important to keep in mind that Viking Age society was not as equal as some want it to be today. So first of all, if you have no idea who I am, my name is David. I am just about to finish my BA in Scandinavian Studies at the University of Amsterdam, and I will be studying Viking and Medieval Norse Studies at the University of Iceland in Reykjavik, which I got this very nice shirt from. And while I am a queer person and my own interests as well as the interests of many young starting academics are going out to the position of the other in history, like women, queer individuals. In regards to the Viking Age, for example, people of non-Scandinavian descent, people who might be considered slaves or in any way, shape, or form excluded from traditional society. I do not think it is a good idea to pretend that Scandinavian society in the Viking Age, or any historical society, was somehow the ideal, equal, diverse, multicultural society that we want it to be now. So, first of all, yes, of course, the view that some have of the Viking Age as being male-dominated does stem in part from research that has been done since the 19th century, predominantly by white men in the West. So obviously the elite educated classes, for example, at prestige universities in England, were looking at areas that were of interest to them. And in a similar way, both German and Scandinavian nationalists used the image of the ultra-masculine Viking warrior to further their nationalist agendas. And while contemporary issues seem to us, at least people who have similar views to me, as more morally, politically correct, they are still a result of a changing political climate. Since the critical turn in around the 60s and 70s, more attention started being given to every person that was not a part of the male elite. And this is difficult to do because most sources that we have from the Viking Age, both material and literary, mostly concern this male elite because they have been written by a male elite. For example, the sagas, which were written about 200 to 300 years after the Viking Age, were written mostly by members of the clergy who were both from well-established families as well as men living in a male-dominated milieu looking at the achievements of men. And when it comes to the archaeological records, obviously people who belong to the elite would have been buried with more, so more can be said about their lives based on what they left behind. They just simply had more to leave behind, meaning it is difficult to reconstruct the lives of those that held lower positions in society. But that doesn't mean that this is impossible and should not be done. Because there's so little known about all these people, this actually provides a very good gap in academia that is now being filled by younger people with interest in those other voices. And while I am part of this, and I am very interested in how, for example, queer identities would have functioned in a society like the Viking Age, it is important to keep in mind that this was a predominantly patriarchal society with an aristocratic elite, at least in mainland Scandinavia. That changed a little bit in Iceland, which was sort of a republic. But this republic idea is now used by people to somehow prove that the Viking Age was a direct precursor to the democratic socialist political environment of the modern Scandinavian countries, which it certainly was not. And it is very easy to assume that things from the past reflect things in the present. And of course, there will always be some grain of truth to it. Like, we are still people, and even if times change, there are still some elements that will continue to show up throughout history. We should still be aware of the place that we are coming from when looking at this period in history. If you, for example, like me, are a queer person living in what is considered today the West, obviously you might have some views that challenge norms, but if you are, again, like me, you are still white, you are still a man, and you have to be aware of your privileges in order to see them in other people, in other periods of time, as well as to be able to deconstruct them both for yourself as within the material that you're studying. So, what I want to say is that in order to challenge some of the views that exist about the Viking Age, you do have to allow yourself to accept that some of the ideas that might be perpetuated by people you might disagree with do hold an amount of truth. And the Viking Age being a male-dominated warrior society is simply what keeps on being suggested through every possible source. But again, just because this was a male-dominated patriarchal warrior society does not mean that these warrior men were the only people living at that time. Women still played a very important role. It is just dangerous to see this role as equal to men, and perhaps people who were seen as women at that time would not have considered their role as equal to men, nor would they have wanted to be seen as equal to men, perhaps. It is very easy to attribute this thing called agency to people that you cannot decide for, per se. You cannot decide for a Viking Age woman what she would have thought about her position in society. You cannot imply your ideas about slavery to an enslaved person during the Viking Age. You cannot know what they thought about their social position. So I'm not saying that we should stop looking at those marginalized voices, absolutely not. I'm just saying that we should stay aware of the broader societal context in which they existed. And yeah, this includes accepting that some of the views that people we disagree with might hold do correspond with the source material, but are just simply not as simplistic as they present them to be, and are not the only perspective that can be voiced. Because that's both the danger and the beauty of a period like the Viking Age. Because the source material is so scarce, and because it is up to so much interpretation, a lot of interpretations can be given to it, and there will never really be a definite answer. And the people that want to give you a definite answer generally have a specific set political agenda. But it is difficult for those who want to deconstruct this mindset of finding one truth, because we are not able to present something concrete in return, because that's not what we want to do. And unfortunately, a lot of people are looking for very specific answers, and that's why, unfortunately, many people find what they are looking for in very simplistic, perhaps faulty knowledge about the Viking Age. So while there are so many different opinions and ideas about the Viking Age, both in academia and in society, every single one of these opinions is based on the positioning of the person that is voicing this opinion. And in order to construct a picture of the Viking Age that is as close to a truth as we can possibly get, it is very important to stay aware of who you are, why you are looking at this period in time in the way that you are looking at this period of time, why you agree with some standpoints but disagree with others, why you have a particular interest and are less interested in other things. And on my channel, I try to be as open as possible about where I come from. But of course, I'm gonna have some implicit assumptions that come with how I've been brought up, where I live, who I have learned from, where I get my information from. And that's why I will never imply that my view is correct while others are not. I might have opinions about misinformation that I will voice, but I think everyone is allowed to have their own opinion, whether I share this opinion or not. And what I ask of everyone is to allow me to have my viewpoints, to have my opinions, and feel free to challenge them, feel free to question them, and I am open to that. But that doesn't mean saying, no, you are wrong and I am right. Debate is necessary and absolutely possible. So if you, based on this entire video, have something to say to me, have something to ask about this topic, feel free to do so. And feel free to talk to other people in the comment section. Feel free to talk to other people in your real life. Reach out to people you might normally not talk to. Be open to at least knowing about the existence of viewpoints that do not match your own, in order to build up your own viewpoints even better. So yeah, that's everything I had to say in this video. It might be a bit chaotic because I'm just ranting. So again, if you have anything to say or add, please do so in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.